Past generations of historians have been pretty quiet on the Masonic links with our history. And part of that is that they don't know the questions to ask or where to find the facts. Everyone has read and understood the Masonic connection between the Founding Fathers and Freemasonry. It's well known that George Washington was a Mason and a number of the early revolutionary people. What's not known is that the second and third generation of people who followed them were also Masons and had just as much impact. When historians talk about the West, it's really hard to separate many times the influence of Freemasonry on Western expansion, exploration, and settlement because they're so intertwined. So many of the people that we know about in history books, people like Kit Carson or Buffalo Bill Cody, Wild Bill Hickok, many people in the early West joined a Masonic lodge. They looked for something unique and evidently found it within those walls. The Masonic Brothers, as they call themselves, tended to be involved in all aspects of Western life. You found them as the store owner that over his shop was the Masonic Lodge. You found them in governmental offices where they were appointed by presidents to oversee big projects in the West, or the simple thing as being a mayor of a small community. The Masons, they always see them in their aprons or their hats and stuff. We, outside the craft, we see them only as people, and famous people sometimes. The people themselves did not divide their life into Masonic and unmasonic. It was all wrapped up together. Everyone has read or known about Lewis and Clark, which both are Masons. And it's interesting to see that the principles that were taught in their lodge and to them through ritual affected them in their Western journeys. It's easy to see in how they set up their camps, how the two leaders arranged their beds so that they were on the same level, which is a Masonic principle. Whenever they had the bicentennial with the Lewis and Clark exhibits going all over the country, one of the things that most people viewed and saw there was Masonic aprons in that collection. When you speak of names like Billy the Kid, I have a friend who found his apron in the archives in a Grand Lodge in the Southwest. No one knew he was a Mason, but there's his apron. His apron's a proof because that piece of cloth is made whenever he does his first initiation into a lodge. And that is gospel, basically, to the Masons. So when you see someone like Billy the Kid have an apron, that means he belonged to a lodge. He associated with other Masons within their circles. You have to wonder what effect it had upon him. Freemasonry likes to portray itself as always good, always right, and it really tries to be. The trouble is that all the lodges are made up of humans, and because they're humans, no matter what kind of lessons are taught them, no matter how they're encouraged to do right, you find people within their ranks that slip on the other side of what's right and wrong. It could be a gunslinger, it could be someone who's a sheriff who turns bad. There's people like Wild Bill Hickok. How do we portray him today? Is he good or bad? Well, in his day, he was both. Today, we tend to think of him as a good person, with a loose side to him. And that is just a natural fit for the West and for the Freemasonry of that day. There's another layer of history that we need to talk about, and it has to do with movies and how they portrayed historical events in the past. Many times you have a historical character in history that's a Mason being portrayed by an actor who's a Mason. It seems like a natural fit, but no one ever talks about it. You have the actors, Roy Rogers, Gene Autry, Tom Mix. They're all Masons, and they promote in their shows Masonic themes that no one ever realized. Doing good, protecting the widow and the orphans, helping the people who can't help themselves, not telling lies, and all these things here are Masonic themes that they're taught within their lodges. Well, at the time, it's actually being dispensed all over the United States unknowingly in this secret history. The secret history of America is so linked to Freemasonry that you cannot separate the two. The trouble is that no one knows the connections. It's easy to connect the dots. You can connect the dots between Masons and who they choose to be with. You can connect the dots when a Masonic president chooses someone for his cabinet, and he chooses someone for an exploring tour, and that guy chooses a guide, and they're all Masons. But they all do good jobs, and they're famous today. The link is just not known. It's amazing to see that the fur companies are headed by Masons. You go to exploring tours of the West, there's usually a Mason in there. You go to the mining camps, and when new groups came into a mining community, if there was a small lodge in place, they would question those guys coming in to say, is there any brothers among you? And then they would associate with them. Masonic lodges on the frontier were numerous. You often wonder what would happen if the Freemasons were not in the West. Would we still have the country as we have today? Explorers like Fremont, with guides like Carson, both Masons. The width and breadth of the country. Would we have New Mexico and Texas if we didn't have Masons? The Alamo, a perfect example of a Masonic link. You walk up to the Alamo and there's a plaque on the wall there that has a square and compass on it. And not only that, the majority of the famous people we find that fought there were Masons. If you go up to the front of the building on the left-hand side, there's a big relief statue there, and all the men who have the most stand out on that are all Freemasons. Travis, Houston, Austin, Crockett. What would our history be like without these in there? And what would our history book read like to students if all the Masons were pulled out? Masons individually affected the West. Was it a conspiracy? No, I don't think so. But they are taught a special thing within their lodges, and that's to do the great work. The great work is to make the world a better place in all forms. And that great work is basically what happened when you see all these people, all these Masons come together, and you see all their events that they were in and all the things that they did. They made the West a better place.